Alright, this is it. The final battle. You spent the entire game leading up to this. This is gonna be epic. Yeah, this is fun. Video game bosses can be something really special. They serve as great intervals between the normal gameplay, where you as the player have to defeat a horrific monster, or a giant robot, or a literal piece of shit, and they can make you feel like an absolute badass. But what's even better than a regular boss is the game's ultimate challenge, the final boss. The biggest and baddest of bad guys, the climactic challenge you have to conquer before the end. Bosses in general just tend to be trial and error. Dodge the attacks, find the weak point, and then beat the shit out of it until it dies. For that reason, bosses can be really hit or miss for me. Some of them can be fantastic, and others can be... I mean, yeah, that's great and all, but the best kind of bosses are ones that are a test of your skills. The ones that a game has taught you throughout your journey. Unless it's Mega Man and you can just annihilate the bosses with the metal blades. Yay, I won! The final boss should be a culmination of all of this. A battle that takes all of the skills you've learned and throws them at you. Or in some super special cases, one that throws something entirely different at you. Not too different though. Okay, Echo the Dolphin? Okay, Echo, what the fuck is that? One of my favorite things in fiction is the final battle. The showdown between the hero and the villain. When they're done well and actually live up to the expectations built up throughout the story, they can be such a joy to watch. And the best thing about video games is that you get to be the one who did it. See that? You did that. It's a great opportunity to do something unique that the game hasn't yet. After all, this should be the biggest and best battle so far, one to surpass everything that you've already gone through. Or in Bayonetta's case, where they thought, hey, we already made this boss freaking gigantic, how the hell do we top that? Well, I don't know, how about you punch her into the fucking sun? What the hell, Bayonetta? Much like the climactic showdown in action movies, this is your chance as the player to finally take out the big bad that's been taunting you throughout the game. And I'm sure we all know by now how incredibly satisfying that can be. Beating that Lionel and Zelda, man, that was something special. One of the biggest problems I really have, though, is that a final battle should be exactly that. A final battle. You do it once. Not something so impossibly difficult and frustrating that you go from being amazed to wanting to kill the developers. I'm not suggesting that a final boss where you can't lose is a good idea, but I can't be the only one who has the epic experience ruined because I keep dying over and over. So if you suck like me, a final boss can go from, this is so goddamn epic, to, please just die. It just takes all the fun out of it, having to do the final battle several times. And yes, that is usually the fault of the player. But I feel like it's an issue when conveying just how epic this final battle should be. Still, I'm sure we've all been there for fighting game final bosses, which are designed to be as cheap as humanly possible. But if you're a little more persistent, you can keep trying and trying and trying until you finally defeat them. And man, can that be the best feeling ever. Despite all the frustration, there is nothing more satisfying than overcoming that final foe and triumphing over the last challenge. I still remember the first time I beat this blue bastard. Yoshi, you are my savior. And of course, there is nothing better than the final boss with a kick-ass soundtrack. Live and learn! Hanging on the edge of tomorrow. This can make even the most tedious of boss fights feel great. Give me a good track to kick their ass with and I don't give a crap how many weak points I have to hit. Get that angelic choir in here, we're taking this guy down! The best final bosses give you a memorable fight with a memorable foe. Unfortunately, a lot of fantastic games really copped out with their finales, like the aforementioned Uncharted, which took until the final installment to get the last boss right, as a lot of games tend to think, just make it super big, that'll make it good. Thing is, while you've got the design down pat, look at this thing. I don't want to touch that. It's usually just another one of those, shoot the weak points over and over until it dies. Not always, but come on, I'm sure we've all been there. So, what makes the final boss good? For starters, they should be someone who is built up throughout the entire game. Someone who taunts you throughout your adventure and shows you how evil they are, or even just someone who's mentioned as being the most powerful being you could possibly fight. Essentially, it should be someone that you want to take down. Next is what I said before, a boss that tests you on everything you learnt throughout the game. Basically, something that really challenges you and makes it feel like an epic battle. Or you can just press a bunch of buttons. That's always fun. I mean, yeah, gameplay is cool and all, but have you heard about quick time events? But you know what makes the perfect final boss? Multiple phases. Ah, hell yeah. It's always good when a final battle has numerous stages because you don't want it to be over too quickly. It should be this epic gauntlet of challenges, a desperate battle for victory. You've led all the way up to this moment, so you better go out with a bang. Oh. Okay. So let's take a look at the final boss Hall of Fame. Zelda games are really, really good at final bosses, even if most of the time you're fighting the exact same guy. A Link to the Past was pretty great, Wind Waker and Twilight Princess gave you a brilliant duel to the death, Breath of the Wild's boss was pretty good until Ganon turned into this thing and basically gave up, Majora's Mask gave you a battle against this horrifying abomination, and then of course there was Ocarina of Time's incredibly memorable tennis match of death. Love him or hate him, Sonic the Hedgehog delivers some pretty flashy final fights, most of the time. And of course, there's the King Koopa himself. Every Mario game features essentially the exact same story, and as such, every game ends in almost the same way. But that's not to say that the fights themselves are bad. Mario games have found a way to reinvent the classic showdown numerous times. Like Mario 64's classic, if excessive, the truly epic and also terrifying Yoshi's Island 2 fight with Godzilla Baby Bowser, Mario Galaxy's Planet Duel, Odyssey's absolute beatdown of Bowser's stupid face, or even Sunshine's Bowser in a bathtub? What? Final Fantasy is notorious for some ridiculous ending boss battles, but the one that I think sticks in most people's heads is Sephiroth from Final Fantasy VII, where the big bad turns into this weird-ass angel thing that can throw meteors at you. Shadow of the Colossus is a game where you kill really, really big monsters. So, naturally, in the final boss, you kill the biggest giant monster. How about Earthbound, where you fought this thing? The original Smash Bros hits you with Master Hand and Crazy Hand, and Brawl throws Mr. Fuckface One-Hit Kill at you. There was Super Metroid, Undertale, both Portal games, almost every Metal Gear. Plants vs. Zombies was pretty fun. Kirby 64 traumatized everyone everywhere. These are all examples of fantastic boss fights, and I'm sure anyone that has played them can attest to how memorable they were. So, what made them good? Look at Mario 64, right? What made that fight so memorable? Badass music? Check. Spooky ass area? Check. One-on-one duel with the bad guy? Got that. So what's the problem with it? Well, you've already done it. Twice. Doesn't make it any less cool, especially as a kid, but it doesn't hold up very well. Compare that to the much improved Mario Odyssey, which lets you beat the absolute hell out of Bowser in one of the most satisfying battles I've ever had the joy of playing. To simplify the hell out of it, final bosses really boil down to two different categories. You got giant skyscraper-sized mega bosses, or smaller one-on-one duels. I can't say I have a preference for either one, so long as they're done well. The aforementioned problem with those bigger boss battles is they tend to have that weak point exploit that you just repeat until you win. This can become more of a chore than a battle, and it's a shame when a boss, especially the final boss, is just super repetitive. I mean, I don't know, I'm not a game designer, so I know it can be hard to make games and whatever, but a final boss, and bosses in general, are significantly better, not when it comes down to you having to work out what giant glowy thing to hit, but instead who's better at the game between the player and the computer. This is where one-on-one duels really shine through. But unfortunately, a lot of the time they try to emulate the feel of battles in movies and such, and subsequently can turn out a bit slow and choppy. There are plenty of good examples of this done right, like Fall of Cybertron's final boss, which nailed everything I could have hoped for. This fight, along with a lot of other one-on-one duels, tend to incorporate quick time events or cinematics into the action, but you know, if it's done well, I have zero complaints. So long as they don't take up the entire fight. You know what game is really good at doing all of that? The Dark Souls of video games. Dark Souls. I can't say I have that much experience, as most of my playtime with the Souls games is just... But the final battles in these games have nailed that epic one-on-one duel where it really does come down to a matter of you being better at the game than the computer. Although, I sometimes don't mind if a final boss is all about making you feel like you're really good at the game. Like the second half of Breath of the Wild's Calamity Ganon fight, which, while it wasn't very challenging, sure as hell made me feel like I was super good at it. If a final boss wants to take a more cinematic approach, then yeah, I'm all for it. Just don't make the whole thing quick time events. No one wants that. Despite the aforementioned tennis match of doom, probably the most highly regarded final boss of all time is from one of the most highly regarded games of all time. Ganon at the end of The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. This fight hits all the right chords. It's epic, it's badass, it's hyped up throughout the game, it's both a one-on-one duel and a giant fight, plot twist, and it's got the most important boss fight mechanic of all. Multiple phases! Yeah, baby! So students, to summarize, what is it that makes a final boss so good? I hope you were taking notes. It's gotta be epic! It's gotta be climactic! It's gotta be different, but not too different, okay? It's gotta have a heart-pumping soundtrack that makes your heart pound and your hands sweat and your dick hard. And most importantly is fun, damn it! This is how your game ends. You better be sure to make it count.